Happy Friday, everyone. John Lorden here. Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. Before we get into the updates today, I wanted to take a moment because I know there's a lot of new viewers out there, and I know not everyone realizes what this channel is right off the top. So the interview that I released earlier this week, I published it in that way for a very specific reason. And I do what I do here, particularly on Searchlight and BrainScratch, in a very specific way. I'm trying to show you guys the sources of information so that you can come to your own conclusions. So like that video that I released earlier this week, I probably could have edited that down to a 30-minute piece, but I think it would have skewed the perception that some of you have about the information and who the information is coming from. So just know that that's kind of a choice that I make with this channel. That's why when I'm doing an episode like we're doing today, I'm going to go through the news sources. I'm going to show you the sources that I'm leaning on and what information is coming from those sources. It's all because I really want you to do the thinking. I don't want to paint a picture for you and, kind of shove my perspective at you guys and just have you go, yep, yep. This is really about us thinking together. That's why the show is called BrainScratch. And I'm just kind of starting the conversation. A huge important aspect of this is the conversation that happens after. And I know that in the video interview from this week, the comments are showing a lot of very valid points, a lot of good considerations that are going on in there. Agree with the information presented in that video or not, I think a lot of really important conversation is happening around that case now. I can tell you for sure because I'm kind of hearing from both sides at this point. And maybe we're going to help drum up that tip. That's ultimately what this is all about. If that information is good, maybe there's someone around that can hear that information and then say, hey, I have a piece that fits that puzzle and call that into the authorities. If the information is bad, there's still a flip side to that, which is people can speak up and say, no, this information isn't accurate and here's why. And that's why I always leave the door open on this series. This is not meant to be a cover a case, do it for one episode, move on. Now, does that happen? Yes, because not all the people involved in all of these cases take the opportunity or are in a good emotional place to engage this process with me on YouTube. And I totally understand that. But the door is open for any of these episodes for people to reach out, people that are involved with the case, family members, people that are working the case in different ways. That's kind of what I built this platform in this way for. But when I present their information, I'm going to try to do it in a way where I'm not tailoring it to fit a particular narrative that I like. I'm not trying to paint a picture for you guys. So that's why that piece came out that way. And I know many of you recognize that. But like I said, I know there's a lot of new viewers out there. So just wanted to take a moment to talk about kind of the scope of this channel and what all this is. So maybe I should put that in my channel trailer. I really think it's time to update that anyway. Today we are looking into updates, and I've been kind of keeping an eye on several cases. I keep an eye on many cases, but 3 cases in particular I've been hoping for some major updates on. One of them we have very significant big updates on. One of them we're getting to, let's just say 2 of them are pretty much in a court process. The third one we're essentially looking for our man. So this will almost feel a little bit like a quasi case cracked a little bit with the last story that we cover, but the first story certainly needs your help. These are all cases that were originally featured on Searchlight, but these are cases where there's a very good chance that these people are not coming back. In one of them, we know for a fact the victim is not coming back. In another one, it's strongly assumed that the victim is not coming back. In the first one, we have a little hope, but it's been 5 years. It's in a tough spot. It still needs some help. There's a person we need to find and we need to question. So let's get into it. The first case we're looking at, and I've done videos on this before. I've been calling her Meta Valentine, but I'm seeing a newer video where she's being referred to as Meta Valentine. So I believe that is probably correct. Meta Valentine went missing in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and in a very scary way. This is obviously surveillance footage, and you can see her. She's walking up the sidewalk here. She gets to the corner that she's going to round to go to where she lives, and for some reason she stops. She kind of hesitates, backs up a few steps, then starts heading down there. And that's not the scary part. Keep an eye on where she was. Someone jumps out of a car and runs after her. And we know who this person is. And that's the person that we're looking for. Let's get an update over at abc11.com about the murder charges that have been filed in this case. Now, this is not a current update. This update is like from March 30th, 2018. I might have even talked about this on the channel before, but I'm looking for updates on this case, and I believe this case is still stuck at this point. There are no other media updates after this, so we've got a person we're looking for. I want to help put the word out again. Mita Valentine was reported missing in 2014 after she failed to show up for Bible study. The district attorney told ABC 11 that her ex-boyfriend, Reginald McDowell, will be charged with first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. Police have not yet arrested McDowell, but said they believe he is the only suspect due to probable cause. He is believed to be in the New York area. Warrants were issued for his arrest February 3rd, 2018. The U.S. Marshals are also involved in this search. Fayetteville police said Reginald McDowell initially cooperated, but then distanced himself from the lead detective and disappeared. McDowell dated Valentine on and off since high school and shared a child with her. So I even went looking for better photos of this guy just to try to help this a little bit more. This is pretty much the only photo that I could find of him. So this is the guy that we're looking for. Reginald McDowell might be in the New York area, but quite honestly, I don't know if he would have stayed there after seeing something like that published. So he might have moved around as well. But this case seems like it's stuck and it needs some help, and that's why we're covering this here on the channel. Moving on to Danielle Stislicki. This is a case that we originally covered also on Searchlight, has moved into BrainScratch territory fairly quickly. Even in the original coverage, it seemed like there was a lot to be concerned about, and that we had a suspect that was kind of shaping up in this, and we actually have a photo here of the suspect. Let's go ahead and give you guys the update on where this case is now. At fox2detroit.com, we get an article from April 19th, earlier this year. Suspect in Danielle Stislicki disappearance charged with first-degree murder. Floyd Galloway has been charged with first-degree premeditated murder in connection to the disappearance of Danielle Stislicki. And we don't know where Danielle's body is. That's an aspect, actually, I think that's in common with all the stories that we're talking about today. But we are seeing, at least I'm seeing, a trend of what seems like more and more that we're seeing prosecution actually happen in what I call these no-body cases. And this Danielle Stislicki case is certainly a solid example of that. Moving on to another article, and this one from September 10th, just a week or two ago. Suspect in Danielle Stislicki case in court for preliminary hearing. So we're going to get some details here about this preliminary trial and some of the information that they're using to try to get a conviction here on Floyd Galloway Jr. If you're not familiar with the Danielle Stislicki case, I'll have links to the original video, plus I think I've done at least one update, all in the description box below, so you might want to pause this and check those out first. But let's see what's coming out through this pretrial information. Floyd Galloway Jr. was charged with the murder of Stislicki, 28, even though her body or remains have never been found. Stislicki was last seen on December 2nd, 2016, as she was leaving her job at MetLife in Southfield. That's a job where she worked with her mother. Her mother also worked at the same place. Galloway was a former security guard there and has long been considered a person of interest in her disappearance. By early December 2016, Galloway had been working security at American Axle. On December 1st, he called his employer and said he had a doctor's appointment and couldn't work the next day. But Danielle's coworker, Brandon Williams, said he saw Galloway at MetLife with the hood up on his car. He also said Danielle was with him. So interestingly, he's not working there at the time of her disappearance, but for some reason, his car is there, the hood is up. Could it be that he knew her pattern from the time that he did work there and knew that she would be leaving for lunch or something like that. Maybe put his car close to where she was parked, had the hood up, and kind of in a friendly way, oh, I'm having car trouble, I need a ride somewhere. Something along those lines is kind of what I'm thinking. Her phone was found in her apartment, and police later searched Galloway's Berkeley home. They also seized her car as evidence and part of his carpet that tested positive for human blood. Apparently, he had literally cut sections of his carpet out, which I would think is very suspicious. I think they also found some shavings from his rug in the trash as well. So it looked like he was really trying to cover something up. Her mother, Anne, testified that months before she disappeared, Danielle received a gift at work. Danielle had received flowers from an anonymous person while she was at work, and she was quite disturbed with it. The handwritten note read, "From secret admirer, hope this made you smile today." A handwriting expert has been brought in, and it was determined that that note was written by Floyd. A carpet sample from Floyd's bedroom wound up having both Danielle and Floyd's DNA on it. The Oakland County Medical Examiner ruled this case a homicide, even though a body hasn't yet been discovered based on evidence. He says Danielle was violently assaulted. I'm really curious to see how much evidence it took to get the medical examiner to make that determination. I mean, the way they're talking about, they're finding her DNA. They're talking about a carpet sample where they've got some of her blood. It's not like an obvious case where, you have ounces and ounces of someone's blood and you're able to say, well, they couldn't survive if they lost this much blood in one time. This seems like a much different situation, but you've got a medical examiner really making a strong call here. And with all this evidence that's now coming in behind that, it looks like there is a strong chance we might see a conviction on this. So what happened through the preliminary hearing? We get the judge making a decision. This is from Hometown Life, and this was published on September 10th, 2019. Evidence piled up against Floyd Galloway Jr., and there's a photo of him, from an FBI agent. Cell phones belonging to Stislicki and Galloway were simultaneously connecting with the same cellular tower on December 2nd, 2016, when she went missing. And that's a cell tower that is close to his home. So at some point, for some reason, their phones are connecting to the same one. Now, if this is a story of, she was just giving him a ride home and then dropped him off or something along those lines, that might be reasonable, but we've got several other conditions to take into account here. Judge James Brady bound over Galloway's first-degree premeditated murder case to Oakland County Circuit Court. Brady mentioned 15 prosecution witnesses and 45 different exhibits. The defense had no witnesses. There is probable cause, this is a quote from the judge, overwhelming probable cause that the defendant, Floyd Galloway Jr., committed that crime. We are elated to have the answer and know that we are moving forward, said Danielle's mother, Anne. Father Richard Stislicki thanked investigators for shedding light on Galloway and what may have happened to their daughter. They still want to know where her body is. Investigators testified they tracked Stislicki's phone to Galloway's residence at 5:07, and it stayed there until 7:53. Galloway's phone is connected to the same cellular tower network along with his home at 6:20. So it seems like Floyd really knew he was going to be doing something wrong this day. He shuts his phone off, but her phone stays on. Now we start getting some time frames. I don't know if we can assume if she was attacked between the time they got to his house, 5:07, and then the time he powers up his phone at 6:20. It's possible the attack could have happened in the car. If I remember correctly, I do think that they might have found some blood in the car, but I don't know if that is because of moving her after the fact. But we have her phone, at least, essentially staying at his house until almost 8 o'clock that night. Is it possible that the phone was left there while he took her and hid her body somewhere? I think so. I think that's likely what we're seeing here. Video footage shared during the preliminary examination showed Galloway at a Tim Hortons within a 10-minute walking distance from Stislicki's Farmington Hills apartment on Lincoln Court around 8:40 p.m. on December 2nd, 2016. The missing woman's keys and Fitbit were found near the Tim Hortons. So you see, we've got a lot of evidence that's really piling up to at least tying him together with her items. And then we have her not being found. It looks like he's trying to hide something that happened in his home by removing carpet. There's just a lot of evidence that's really pointing here. Interesting that the time frame that they note from the video footage is 8:40, and he's got about a 10-minute walk to get to that Tim Hortons from her house. Her cell phone is found back in her apartment. So if we look at the time frame of them saying that her phone was there until 7:53, but then he pops up on video at 8:40, it seems like this is probably a pretty solid fit, that he then took her phone, drove her vehicle back to her house, parked her vehicle, took the phone up, put it in the apartment, maybe to try to throw off tracking or something. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the thoughts behind all this. And then decided he was going to go to the Tim Hortons and then dropped off the keys and her Fitbit somewhere there. Obviously, with taking the Fitbit, that once again seems like something that he was worried about being tracked with. I do believe some Fitbits are GPS enabled. I know many of them are in terms of just watching for like the distance you're walking and things like that. But I don't know if they actually send GPS back the other way, or if that information can be tracked later if the Fitbit's hooked up to a computer. I think it probably depends on the model. It's been a long time since I've really looked into Fitbits like that. So it really seems like they're putting a pretty strong chain of events together, and he's going to have some really, really tough questions to answer when this thing goes to a full-blown trial. But the big question, especially for Danielle's family, is she going to be found? Are they going to be able to put her at rest and really process their grief? Another article from Hometown Life, this one published September 18th, 2019. Will Danielle Stislicki be found? Some experts doubt it. They say that if Floyd Galloway Jr. is convicted of murder or a lesser charge, any chance of parole could be lost if he shares his secrets, and any future claims of innocence would fall on deaf ears. That's an interesting aspect. It also makes me wonder if he's going to try to use it as a bargaining chip in a sentencing phase or something along those lines. Quote, "They don't usually reveal the location of body as this cements their guilt," wrote Daniel Kennedy, an Oakland University adjunct criminal justice professor, in an email. "If there is nothing in it for them, they don't talk. Police will have to locate the victim themselves, which may never happen. Perhaps someone may happen upon the remains accidentally." I keep thinking about that time frame that we now have elements of him turning his phone back on. We know at that point then he's home at 6:20, and we know that he's spotted on the footage at 8:40. So we've got, a little over an hour or a 2-hour window in there. But, driving one direction and then coming back, that could be a 60-mile radius. I mean, we're talking about a pretty significant area to try to look through to figure out where she is. Some experts following the case agreed Galloway, a married man, demonstrated stalker tendencies. First, of course, was the secret admirer's note. There were also text messages that he was sending to Danielle that at some point she actually just stopped responding to. Galloway, 32, is serving time behind bars already, not for this, for pleading guilty last year to sexually assaulting a Hines Park runner in Livonia the September before Stislicki's disappearance. That woman seemed to recover, finishing a half marathon a month after her attack. Wayne State University criminal instructor James Geistman said the Stislicki family probably has been suffering longer than most victims' families because they don't have the closure that accompanies proper burials and cremations. He noted that Great Britain has acknowledged crime victims' pain in Helen's Law. Murderers who won't share the location of their victims' bodies could be denied parole. What a great idea. Why don't we have something like that here? I think that is just, and I think the timing of when that information is shared should affect that as well. I really get the sense that this case, at least from the information we're reviewing here, looks pretty solid. Now, admittedly, we're not hearing a whole lot of the defense's point of view. I really don't know what they could trot out in something like this. I mean, we're tracking his steps pretty solid. We've got people that saw them together. We've got their cell phones popping online together. Like I said, there's a lot of very tough things for him to answer here. I have a feeling that when this gets to the sentencing phase, he's going to try to strike some kind of bargain with them. But with something like Helen's Law, it would be great if they said, you know what, up until that jury goes into that room to decide if you're guilty or innocent, you have to give us the location of the body right up till then. If you wait until 1 minute after that jury comes out and says that they're ready to give a verdict, it should be invalid at that point. It shouldn't change your eligibility for parole, or it shouldn't affect your sentencing phase. It really bothers me that something like that could be used as a bargaining chip like that, something to hang over, because who are you hurting at that point? The victim is already deceased. Danielle isn't hurting because of them doing that. It only hurts the family. And to have the family be tweaked or disturbed or hurt in any way strictly for this guy to use it as a chip so that things can go easier on him, why do we allow that? I don't know. But we do see it happen from time to time. As a matter of fact, I think that's a good way to roll into our next case. So we had the first case where we're looking for a guy. They're ready to file charges. The second case, they've got the guy already on previous charges, but they're ready to file new ones. Preliminary hearing goes through. Judge says, yep, we're pushing this to full blown. This third case is one that really tugs at my heart. It's one that I originally covered when it happened. I've watched a lot of what this family has gone through. It's been very, very unfair to them, very hurtful to see what they're going through. That is the case of YingYing Zhang out of Illinois. And this is a case that is another one of those very scary situations. You have a foreign exchange student come into this country, an excellent student by all accounts, trying to do better for her family, and her life gets senselessly taken. She's essentially looking for a ride to get somewhere, and she gets in the wrong car. It's far more than that simple. But here's a quick update on Charlie Project. Of course, I'll also have my original videos in the description box below. On the day of her disappearance, she was running late to a meeting to sign a lease with a landlord. She was sighted on surveillance footage near the B4 parking garage on North Goodwin Avenue at 2 p.m. Zhang had just gotten off a bus when a black four-door Saturn Astra hatchback pulled up beside her. She had a brief conversation with the driver, then got into the vehicle. She's never been heard from again. And this is the guy that was driving that vehicle. And what happened through the process? Let's find out. His name is Brent Christensen. Brent Christensen found guilty in kidnapping and death of YingYing Zhang, and this is from June 2019. The 12-person jury deliberated for less than 2 hours to reach the verdict, which was largely expected given that Christensen's own defense team had repeatedly said during trial he was responsible for Zhang's kidnapping and death. Outside the courthouse, Zhang's father read a statement in Chinese to the media. There is no language that can describe our pain and suffering. We hope and believe that this trial will eventually bring justice to YingYing and to us. Because he was convicted of a federal crime of kidnapping resulting in death, Christensen faces only two options: a life sentence or the death penalty. And this is an area that hasn't used the death penalty in years, I think coming up on almost 8 or 9 years at this point. Continuing at WTTW.com, Brent Christensen sentenced to life in prison for YingYing Zhang killing. This is in July of 2019. And this is a memorial stone that they have at the school in honor of YingYing. A 12-person jury deliberated for more than 8 hours over the course of 2 days in Peoria's federal courthouse, but failed to reach a unanimous decision in the death penalty case. Instead, the judge officially imposed a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of release. So in this case, we also had that whole give up the location of the body and use it as a bargaining chip type situation happen as well. But it happened before the trial. Essentially, he told his legal team, yeah, we'd be willing to give up the location. He will go ahead and plead guilty, and he'll give up the location, and all you guys have to do in return is make sure that he gets life in prison instead of the death penalty. Here we have them say no, and then they run through the whole process, and he does wind up with only life in prison, and now the family doesn't have the location of where her body is. Or do they? More details kind of come out later, and essentially the prosecution didn't feel confident that the information that he would have given them would have truly led to her location. And there's probably good cause for that. It seems like they caught him in several lies. He's tried to take credit for other murders where they're pretty certain he had nothing to do with them. Very hard to know what to trust out of the lips of this guy. So I appreciate their approach. I know that they were going for a death penalty case here. Didn't quite get it because the jury couldn't get the unanimous vote. Quote, "For his unthinkable acts, he is being held accountable," said U.S. Attorney for the Central District of Illinois, John Milheiser. "He will serve the rest of his life in prison, and he will die in prison as he should for these horrendous acts." Prosecutors presented a handful of aggravating factors in support of the death penalty, arguing Zhang's death occurred during the commission of another crime, which was kidnapping. It occurred in a, quote, "heinous, cruel, or depraved manner," and that it involved torture, and it required substantial premeditation. Christensen's defense team, on the other hand, offered 49 mitigating factors related to Christensen's family history of mental illness, his own substance abuse and alcohol issues, and the impact his execution would have on his family. That is an interesting point to bring up to a family that has lost their daughter. I can't even believe they put, if you've got 49 mitigating factors, why are you going to present that one? I don't know. Beyond the 49 factors offered by the defense, jurors themselves came up with 2 additional mitigating factors on their verdict form. 2 jurors felt it was relevant that Christensen had been taking alcohol and antidepressants, which they felt could result in serious side effects. Interesting. From taking alcohol, who do we blame for that then? We can't go after the alcohol manufacturers and say, hey, you guys are responsible for what this guy did to this girl. That just makes no sense to me. The antidepressants, I think, is in a bit of a different category because it's something that's not readily available. It's something that he was likely prescribed. If he wasn't evaluated properly and he was prescribed something that could make him act out in some way, there might be something to that in terms of making it what I would consider a mitigating factor. But I don't know how alcohol gets into that equation, especially because I don't think you can buy a box of aspirin that doesn't tell you if you're taking this, don't take alcohol with it. So I'm not sure. But Christensen would have become the first Illinois resident to receive a death sentence since the state abolished capital punishment in 2011. Only one other Illinois man is currently on federal death row. While they said they respect the jury's decision, Zhang's family disagree with the result and made clear their singular goal has not changed: locating YingYing's remains and taking her home. Do they have a shot at doing that? Is there any information out there that can help them with that? Yes, but it comes from that source, and quite honestly, I don't know if we can trust him or not. Another article at WTTW: finding YingYing Zhang's remains may be impossible, family says, after new details surface. And this is from August 7th, 2019. After killing Chinese scholar YingYing Zhang, Brent Christensen placed her butchered body in 3 separate garbage bags, which he tossed in a dumpster outside his Champaign apartment before disposing of her personal items among trash receptacles around the Champaign-Urbana area. That's according to statements Christensen made to federal prosecutors under an immunity agreement in November 2018, which offers the first legitimate information on Zhang's possible location since she was last seen alive in June of 2017. I just have to ask, do we know if it's legitimate information? I don't know. I really don't. I think we have to give serious consideration to the source of that information. Zhang's family was notified by prosecutors last month that Christensen's defense team provided information about the potential site of the remains. I think that's a much better way of identifying it, being in a landfill in Vermilion County along the Illinois-Indiana border. But even with that knowledge, conducting a search of the landfill is a process fraught with challenges. Anyone wondering about how that can be, just look into the videos we've done on the Corey McKeague case and look at what that mother has gone through, and she works for law enforcement. They have spent, I think, millions at this point trying to search and find any trace of Corey, and they've been unable to. According to some information from Zhang family attorney Steve Beckett, the area where Zhang's body was likely dumped is some 50 yards wide and was covered with at least 30 feet of garbage from other dumpster collections. Here's a quote from him. "Federal investigators described for us at this stage, with decomposition and then compaction, the size of the remains could be smaller than a cell phone," Beckett added. Terrible. Terrible, terrible. You can see the pain on the family's face in this photo. And a quote from them, "We're really miserable." The Zhang family have not decided on whether they will stay in the U.S. in hopes of a possible search or return to their native China. Such a hard call to make. And I think just weighing in terms of thinking what Corey's mother has gone through and Corey's girlfriend, who now has a baby by him, what that whole family has gone through in the search process. I watched the press around all that. I watched the family first thanking them for starting the search, then lashing out about how they were doing the search, then lashing out about them stopping the search. It's just another emotional roller coaster. But if you ask yourself, if it was my family member, I don't care how small the remains are, if there's some part of them that we could lay to rest, wouldn't you want to do that? So I really, really get it. But man, in a series of very tough decisions, what a hard one to make at the end of all this. I'm just thankful they at least have some sense of justice to lean on, knowing that this guy will never walk a free man in his life again. But man, I don't know how you make that decision. I certainly don't know what the right answer is. At the newsgazette.com, murdered UI scholar's family again going home without her. And this is as of August 28th, 2019. Her father, mother, and brother are leaving for Chicago this morning and will be flying to China, their attorney said. They're leaving under stress, the stress of not knowing that they'll ever recover their daughter's remains, Steve Beckett told News Gazette Media on Tuesday. As far as I know, no decision has been made about a search of the landfill, he said. Earlier this month, 2 churches hosted a memorial service where Miss Zhang was remembered as a bright young woman with big dreams, full of smiles, generous and kind. She was ranked number 2 in her college class, only behind her boyfriend, and went on to study at Peking University, one of the top 2 universities in China. After grad school, she came to the UI in April 2017 as a visiting scholar to study crop growth with the hopes of pursuing her doctorate and becoming a professor back in China. She was described as the hope of her working class family. UI also announced an endowment for international students in crisis and their families. With money raised from a GoFundMe campaign, Ms. Zhang's family provided the lead $30,000 gift to YingYing's fund, which has since been matched by more than 500 people who have contributed an additional $33,000. The family also gave $20,000 in rewards to individuals who helped lead to her murderer's arrest and conviction. I wanted to point that out because we really never get to hear about that part of it on this channel. It's not often that it will be publicized, hey, rewards were actually paid out to people that keyed in tips for finding this person. And it looks like that's exactly what happened here. So these rewards we're always talking about on this channel, they do happen. They do get paid out. So I did find a page for the fund. YingYing's fund has been established in honor of YingYing Zhang and will support international students in moments of crisis. The fund shall provide support for international UIUC students who experience emergencies or other situations where they are in urgent need of access to funds to address the urgent situation. and ideally continue their education. It may also be used to support familial travel expenses, which may include but are not limited to airfare, lodging, and meals for the student's immediate family members to support the student during their time of need. I really like that they are engineering this fund in particular to try to address exactly what YingYing's family went through. I remember the original GoFundMe. I remember some people were actually critical of it because of how successful it was, it seemed. You've got a family that is traveling around the world. They've been over here a few different times at this point. That doesn't happen for free. We know we're talking about a working class family. I'm happy that there was so many people there to support them, but for them to turn around, to take some of what was donated and to start this fund to help any other students that find themselves in a position like that, I think that's the best way to give forward in this situation. So, of course, in the description box below, I'll have a link to this page. If you are moved to do so, please click that link. Please come here and click that Donate Now button. On behalf of myself and my amazing supporters through PayPal, Patreon, people that buy merchandise, thank you for helping me make a donation to this fund. We're going to do that just as soon as I'm done filming today's episode. So that's the updates. 3 similar cases, 3 women that have gone missing. It looks like there's a strong possibility that we probably have lost all of them, but we've got 3 cases at very different phases. I'm hopeful that Danielle's case continues on its track. It looks like it's in good shape. I think there's a very good chance we're going to see a conviction, especially when you couple up what he's already sitting in jail for. But when it comes to Meet a Valentine, that one needs help. We need eyes and ears open. Someone needs to find that guy and to turn that information into the authorities. I'll have contact information for them also in the description box down below. A big thank you to PayPal supporters Randy Volkel and Jennifer Dixon. If you'd like to support the channel, you could do that over at www.lordandarts.com. Take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.